Alright, so folks, set 3 has finally fully released. We would normally have gotten this on the Monday, but because there was a Japanese holiday on the Monday, this was delayed until Tuesday, and Tuesday was the release of the Tuesday stream where we got a lot of the Zero news, and also of course got the big restriction announcement as well, and so that is, of course, what took up the Tuesday slot. And so today on Wednesday, we are talking about the set 3 first impressions. You know, the full set list is out. I've kind of looked through everything, checked out all the kind of like potential weird commons and like whatever might, you know, look important and influential. Of course, now looking at this, we know that the critical triggers are limited to 8 maximum, so that whole idea of like 11 crit decks just gets thrown out the window. So we kind of look at the whole set in a different light as well, which is pretty good. So without any further ado, let's get into it and talk about this booster set. Alright, so here we are at the actual set list. So we're going to basically, what we're going to do is I'm going to talk about essentially what I think the nations, how good they feel from the set overall. And so how good they feel, you know, in terms of like the different ride lines and stuff like that. And then we're going to look at the high rarity cards and talk about my impressions of them, because I didn't really like make separate videos for them this time around the way I did for the last 2 sets. And then we're gonna kind of talk about some of the other like kind of like worthy of note lower rarity cards as well. So first things first, for Dragon Empire, I think overall Dragon Empire is a big winner in this set. Like Expector is an amazing, like in general the Verena support in the set is very, very nice, and there's like quite a few different builds and different ways you can build Nirvana, which I'll be exploring on my stream, so you can check that out as well. And then on top of that, Eugene finally feels like a very real deck, like a very, very good deck. It got really cool tools, borderline like free almost cycle and retire and power-ups, and like a bunch, like a really good order and just a lot of good stuff for Eugene. Even Overlord got some interesting support cards, because there's some cards that ask your Vanguard to hit, and of course Overlord is a deck that always hits when it attacks the rear guard, so you get those kind of effects too. So I think Dragon Empire overall got some cool cards and a very nice generic double rare as well that I think can help in any deck. For Dark States, I think Bruce of course got better with Derek. I don't think Derek is that insane. I think it is a good card, but of course with no restrictions happening to the deck, Leonard will still be very strong. I think we do need to sit down and test though quite a lot to see how good things will be going into this meta, especially when it comes to Bruce especially. But for the time being, I mean, Bruce was already a really good deck, so there's no way it's going to get worse. But I think that this set brings the power level of the other decks a bit closer as well. Then of course Greedon and Baromagnus. It's pretty funny how Baromagnus didn't really get much direct support in this set, but a lot of the Greedon cards are very generic and ask for an effect that puts them into the soul from the rearguard circle, which Baromagnus does as well. So technically some of this stuff is also Barrow support, which is really, really nice. And then Greedon itself is also very strong. I think it's the best of the new ride lines, to be honest, because games ending at 7 damage is really strong, and also the Vanguard restand is very powerful, especially with the bonus effects that you can get from the things that go into the soul from the rearguard circle. So we'll talk about that a bit later. For Brandgate, Prison got their main support from the promo that came out when the Lyrical Monasterio booster came out, which we should be getting when we get Lyrical Monasterio in English as well, I hope. And then Orphist got a restanding rearguard, which is just amazing on Persona Ride turns and finally gives us like a better win con in a way. So I really do like that a lot. Gravidia, on the other hand, feels a bit high rolly. This deck definitely would have liked to play 11 crits, and now it won't be able to, you know, with the whole doubling triggers thing. But I think the playstyle for this deck will be like to farm 3 meteors for a while, and then when your deck is super compressed of just triggers, then you fire off the 5, and then you basically just try to like hit a super big high roll with your 3 attacks. It seems interesting, but I don't know how good it really will be. I think that's something that I need to test myself, so I'm not too sure on Gravidia. Orphist is really good in this set though, and Prison was already very good, so it basically just got couple of things, but I don't think it really got much better. Then for Keter, Ragrail is a really interesting generic card that essentially lets you to drive check with him on rearguard circle, and if you rest 4 rearguards for his cost, you don't have to actually discard anything, but if you rest 3 or less, then you have to discard 3 cards from hand. If you rested 1 or less, then you have to discard 5, so it's pretty damn expensive. But of course, you know, it's pretty interesting. You can play a more high rolly build of Bastion. You could try this in Hexor, but I think you don't really have the Counterblast space for that kind of thing either. And then for Hexor, you know, speaking speaking of which, it got the triple rare isn't that great. Sobas 1 to stack top 2 and then like you have to rearrange it on the top isn't super great. Wayne did that better last set, but at the same time it's more like filtering and looking at the top, which is really important for this deck to succeed, and it's also a pretty decent attacker on the rear, which I think is very nice. And then PBD got a couple support cards here, but sadly it's going to need a bit more than that to actually thrive. You know, maybe this card, maybe it needs this card, who knows. And then finally for Stoicheia, I think, so we don't have Magnolia in here, but Magnolia got some really interesting double rares and below, which I've heard from people testing the deck, that the deck's still pretty damn strong and very fast, and you know, if you need a good deck to beat Bruce, then look no further than Magnolia, I guess, because that is definitely the deck that is super fast and able to close out games quickly. And then Zorga, oh my god, Zorga got this card. This triple rare, I think, patches up every single issue that Zorga kind of had. You now have the ability to tutor for one-of orders. You can play orders as one-ofs, and this guy will search them out and put them into your drop zone. And on top of that, he basically says that when you play an order, you Soul Blast 1 to get 5k power, and if you Alchemagic, you can bounce the rearguard back to hand. So what's really cool about this is that you can revive things like PGs or like over triggers or just regular triggers or whatever you want with Zorga, and then bounce them back to hand, which is so damn good. Like, this is just super nice, and overall, like, this grade 2 does so much for the deck. I think Zorga is going to go up a lot in this set, in my opinion. Flagberg, I think, is very piece reliant, but with critical triggers being limited to 8 now, I think that gives it a bit more breathing room. It is a very piece reliant deck, so you're going to be playing a lot of draws, in my opinion, but luckily that once you start, you know, once you get to Flagberg and you can do at least 3 attacks, you do draw more cards per turn in general. So I think the deck has potential, but it could definitely use some more support, just like how Magnolia took a little bit more support to get good as that kind of multi-attack deck. I think Flagberg also has really good future potential, but for the time being feels like it might not be as powerful as it could be, and that's basically the thing. All right, then looking at the other high rarity cards, this card, I don't even know when it got revealed, but it's so damn good. When your opponent's drop zone is 4 cards or more, he gets plus 2k power, plus 5k shield, so it's already a 10k shield, and if it's 8 or more, then it's a 15k shield, and it's on both players' turns. Like, that is such a nice defensive card that is so generic in Dragon Empire. I really want them to add more cards like this, and I somehow completely missed this card at first. Like, this is so nice, and like, the more tempo-based Nirvana build I think will be playing this. Even Eugene could also be playing this, and like Overlord could be playing this. It's a really cool generic double rare, and I think has crazy potential. We also got a overdress searcher. I think you don't really have the counterblast for it, to be honest. Like, your only CC in the deck is Elgar, which is a great card, but if you counterblast so much that Erger can't even keep up with the countercharge, it's not that great. So I think Counterblast 1 to look at top 7 for overdress is cool. There's a lot of overdresses now in one deck, but I don't know, it just feels like you're going to be gated by CB very quickly, although she looks amazing, so it's a bit unfortunate. This card is pretty bad, unfortunately. Like, it's, I don't know, 11k attacker that then goes to soul when you discard for right deck. I don't know. This guy is pretty busted in premium, but probably will be restricted very soon. And then otherwise, just a defensive card, which is also pretty nice, that, you know, he can basically go back to soul after being guarded with, and he's a 10k guard. This is probably my favorite card for Bruce. Like, I think Derek is a pretty good card, but Regina is, in my opinion, the one that really kind of like settles it, where she basically says on final rush, once per turn act, you can count +1 and put 2 rear guards into your soul, and then choose a card from your soul and call it to rear, and then for that turn, that unit and this unit gain plus 10k power. So you run generally quite a few draws in Bruce because you need the draw power to hit your pieces, and you essentially get to like put the draws, for example, or the cards you don't need into your soul to trade them for something like a Leonard or a Protobulb or a Marjorie or whatever you need for that turn. So I think she's a really good card, and in my opinion, the one that pushes Bruce higher than the actual like other cards in this set. So I think Regina is really good. And then the other support, like Incan is really good. Greedon support, just because he gives him an extra drive for Counterblast 2, and you don't CB like that much, I would say, for Greedon, at least from the looks of it. This is a little bit like, it's an interesting, like, it's a card with a crit in prison, but it's a pretty tough cost, and you have to have a lot of cards in the prison to actually get it off. So I don't know. Cool little defensive card for Gravidia. I like this card for prison. It's a great one that basically says, like, you take something from your opponent's, like, you basically take something from your prison and put it back on the opponent's field, and then you choose something from their field and put it into the prison. So you can basically take like put like a grade 3 or a grade 2 behind their Vanguard, so it's kind of like stuck there. And then you can also just basically like give them some random garbage, you know, like a trigger on the board as well, and take something useful. So it's interesting. Not sure how much play it will see though. All right, so Ease Rod Angel is really nice because this is like a generic way to plus in Keter, period. You can play this in PBD, you can play this in Bastion, you can play this in Hex Orb to just fill up your board, right? Soul Blast 1, check top and call it is really, really nice. And this is like the kind of plus that you could see in Premium easily too. Like it's such a generic way to plus, and I really, really like it. Like this card is super good. This isn't as great. If you have 4 or less cards in hand, count almost 1, look at top 5 and add a grade 3 unit card from among them to your hand. I'm sorry, not to your hand, you call it, but like top 4, like if you have to have 4 cards in hand, it kind of hurts. But yeah, and true, this is a scry, so if you choose not to call it, stays on top, so this is also like Hex Orb support, right? Speaking of which, Hex Orb got a Persona Ride Searcher, which I think puts the deck even up higher, as I mentioned earlier. And then this is also like, you know, pretty good multi-attack for Flagberg that we talked about in the video before. This card for Magnolia, I'm not that impressed with. It's a cool little God Restrict, but it seems lackluster for the cost you pay. This card though is really nice. It's like a 13k attacker for Magnolia, or like 18k if you use Magnolia's skill, and it's also 10k shield, and at the end of the battle attack from the back row, it goes back to your hand. So you can actually essentially just like, you know, like attack with a 13 or an 8, or you attack with an 18 and then bounce it back to hand and guard with it as a 10k. Really, really nice. So that's the foils. I think overall the foils are really good in this set. There's quite, I think there's a few that are kind of like but for the most part they're really, really nice. Especially the triples all feel super, super good. Like a lot of this is either really good cards or really good potential in the future. Looking at the low rarity cards, I think the point of note is this guy. He says when your Vanguard's attack hits, you can retire him to draw 1, countercharge 1. In Overlord, this is spicy. In Overlord, this is spicy because you can basically refund Overlord's skill, which is really cool. This is Eugene support that if, like, it's an X skill that if you retired something or on your opponent's side of the field, you can almost want to call it out, and then he puts him back into the soul to give your Vanguard power, so you can then call it out again next turn, so you can like dodge stuff like Leonard. And then of course every nation got a new critical, which goes to soul, and this extra soul will help a lot of decks, so we definitely do like that. And then this order for Eugene is really nice. Like you choose your Vanguard, give it the ability when you retire something during your main phase on your opponent's side of the field, you draw 1. That is super cool, super cool. This card for Bruce I also quite liked. Soul Blast 2 to give your front row plus 5k, and if you're in Final Rush, give your Vanguard plus 1 crit. It's once per turn, but if you have 2 of these on the board, that's plus 2 crit to your Vanguard and Persona Ride for Soul Blast 4. So seems pretty good, but I think for the time being there's no space for it. This helps Barrow not deck out, and it also has a pretty nasty 50 attack combo in Premium. And if you want to know more about that, check out Living Proof's channel. He covered that combo in his video. Greedon supports are very nice overall, just to like power up and make that restand be more threatening. Crit is also good in Dark States because everyone needs soul. This Pandemonium, I think for Bruce, the previous order, it was better. I think this one is nice in Barrow because it's a, you know, it's just an order that count plus 1 soul charge 4 is really, really nice, you know, for Barrow Magnus as well. And then of course, the other supports, like this is the Gravidia grade 2, obviously it's going to be good. This is an interesting card for Prison that lets you soul charge more when you put in free stuff from Prison. This is an interesting grade 1 for Orphis that I don't think we have space for, that lets you soul blast 1 and retire itself to call a Shadow Army token, while also functioning as a World Searcher that people ran already in the previous set. So some people will definitely run this, but I personally think it's kind of like, it's okay. I'll probably pass on it. There's also like a counter charger if you can soul blast 2 for Gravidia. I'm not sure if it actually needs it. And then most importantly, oh my god, like this thing is so good. So this is a new world set order that costs Soul Blast 2 to play, and it's a grade 3. But in the order zone, it says when your Shadow Army token is played for that turn, that unit gains plus 5k power. So you can turn your Shadow Army tokens into 20k, and if you have 2 of this in play, let's say on turn 4, you can have 50k Shadow Army token columns, like without Persona Ride. That is so good. I think that this order is going to be very, very good. I know a lot of people are testing it like 2 or 3, and I think that's the right call because you want to draw into it, and it's just so nice. Like, yeah, it's a lot of soul, but we do generate it with the new criticals, and we do also, like, we soul blast less because I think we're going to be dropping, you know, the darkness that nobody knows. So I think it's really good. Then on top of that, we had a bit of PBD supports. Of course, this order I really like. When is this girl releasing as a card? She looks so pretty. But this basically lets you set up a Hex Orb skill on turn 3 without Persona Ride. Count plus 1, soul blast 1, and then reveal a crit or a front from your hand. Draw 1 if your opponent's Vanguard is on grade 3 or higher, and then put the card you revealed as a cost on top of your deck. So it's really nice. Bastion gets this as an option. It's a set order that you discard one to play, and then all your grade 3 rearguards get boost, so you can drop Darkstring technically, but it does cost, like, you can't play Form Up for that turn basically, because that's your order play for the turn, and it's technically a -2 from hand to play as well, so I'm not too sure if it will see play. We might still be on Darkstring, to be honest. Then this card is pretty cool. If you run out of Soul, you can Soul Charge 2 when it's played, so this is kind of nice for like Flagberg and stuff. Flagberg in general got really good cards that we've already covered. This Pot of Greed for Zorga is really nice. So this says like this cost is reduced for every card in your bind zone by Counterblast 1, and it costs Counterblast 4 to play, so it does get reduced to basically free to draw 2. Very good. This is really, really good. I like this a lot. Really, really do like it. And then this guy basically is an interesting little grade 3 that lets you, like, when you ride over him, it counts as a persona ride, even if it's a normal ride. Like, it's a pretty interesting grade 3. Then there's a cool little on hit for Eugene as well that lets you draw 1 and retire something in your opponent's field if his attack hits, but you have to retire him as a cost. Then on top of that, I think that was mostly it. Like, we got these 2 orders. This is like what I call the Hyper Librarian, that lets you counterblast 1 and give your Vanguard the skill that when you place a rearguard and by overdressing, you draw 1 and give your Vanguard plus 5k, so you can basically take the Hyper Librarian challenge and try to overdress as many times in one turn and draw through your whole deck, you know, for Counterblast 1, which is pretty cool. But of course, some of those overdresses will cost Counterblast 1 as well, so keep that in mind. So yeah, that's also very nice. Eugene got a cool Blitz order as well, which says if you're on Eugene as a Vanguard and your Vanguard's being attacked, you can Counterblast 1 to play it, and then you give 10k to your Vanguard, and at the end of that battle, the booster of the rearguard that attacked gets retired, basically. So it's a pretty nice Blitz order, but sadly there's no space with all the other orders you're playing. Bruce got a Vermilion that doesn't seem very good. It like attacks front row on rearguard circle, which is like okay, I guess. And then of course we also have an interesting like big attacker for standing rearguards, so this is Greedon support. What else? Then she looks really pretty, but sadly not that great. Just a little, like, you know, when you soul charge, you can almost want to draw if you persona road. It's a very restrictive card. This one takes away intercept and boost from opponent's cards from in the same column if you have 7 or more soul, so that's also pretty nice. I think it's also a really cool card, but it's pretty easy to out, but it's interesting. This card already people are seeing as a problem in premium, I think. It says you can put it to soul, and if you choose one of your rearguards, give it plus 2k power, and then if you have 7 or more soul, for that turn when that rearguard attacks, for that battle, your opponent cannot guard with grade 1 or higher. So it's a Hamiel skill, which is, well, I guess it's kind of a Hamiel. No, it's not a Sentinel restrict, it's a grade 1 or higher restrict. So people are already trying out like a Hamiel Bruce build in standard and stuff like that. It's a pretty good grade 1. It's a pretty good grade 1, and the cost is to put it to soul, which is like really, really good, right? And then of course, a lot of the Greedon stuff is pretty good. This card is another countercharger for Orphis. The art is super sick, but it's just Soul Blast 1, Countercharge 1, which Bubble Mine does better. This lets you basically like tells your opponent to put something from hand to prison, and then they draw 1. So if you want to deck your opponent out, this could be a pretty cool card. This thing gives you, lets it retire itself to basically like give your Vanguard power defensively if you are on Dark Knight or Abyssal Dark Knight. So more defensive cards we definitely like, although I don't know how good it really is going to be. And then that's more or less it. We basically have, you know, for Brankgate, just like a few more cards that don't stand out too much. Like cards like this that give your grade 2 rearguards boost might be better in the future, but for the time being it's very much just okay. Let's see. This card works with a new triple rare for Keter, which basically says if you persona roll this turn, Kalmas 2 and retire this unit, and then choose one of your grade 3 units and give it +1 drive. So it's pretty heavy though. That's Kalmas 4, so I don't know if you really want to be doing that. So it's pretty interesting. This is what, like, you can put this to soul and rest another rearguard to look at top 3 and add all the grade 3s you find from among them, like reveal them and add them to your hand. So for Bruce, that's kind of interesting. I think she has beautiful art. She says during your turn, if she's placed on rear or discarded from hand, you can choose a rearguard in your back row and stand it. So it has a bit of like synergy with the new Bruce stuff. This card is kind of funny in premium as well. It says when placed on rear, Soul Blast 1, reveal 3 grade 3s from your hand, and then choose a grade 3 from your drop zone and put them on top of your deck. So in premium, you can technically stack your Heal Guardians on top of your deck, which is kind of funny for Soul Blast 1 and reveal 3 grade 3s. It's kind of cool. I think it's a cool idea. This in premium, this says when placed on Vanguard, you can play a normal order from your drop zone without paying its cost. So I can use the book order from V for free, which is like lets you draw 3 and give 3 units plus 10k, which is pretty strong, I'd say. And I think that's more or less it. Oh yeah, also this, the prized Trident, is really good. When your other unit attacks, if it's the 5th battle of that turn, you can put him into your soul to countercharge 1. This is good in both Flagberg as well as Magnolia, so having that both soul charge and counter charge is really, really important. And that's about it. Then we have this blitz order for Zorga as well, that like if you have 4, you basically put 4 order cards in your bind zone to your drop zone to counterblast 1, and then give one of your attacked units when your opponent's rearguard attacks plus 20k power. So it's pretty interesting. There's quite a few cool cards, and also of course these are the holos, and then the SPs are also pretty cool, and the DSRs they said are very, very nice, of course. But I want to look at the SPs because of course these are going to be big money. You know, the triple rares are definitely going to be worth a fair bit, but I think also the double rares, like, they look really, really nice. Some of them are a little bit of a miss, I would say. Some of them are definitely a bit of a miss, like you won't be too happy to pull these. But one funny SP that I think they brought about is this, the actual meteor. The meteor is an SP, so have fun gathering that. And of course all the new critical triggers that go to soul are also new additions, and they're all SPs. They don't have holo versions. Unfortunately, they don't come in holo, only rare in SP. And yes, the Greed Online is also available in SP, which is very, very nice. So yeah, that is a set. That is D-BT03. Those are my first impressions. I think overall it's a really good set. It helps to catch up a lot of decks to the top level of the meta. Things like Verena and like Eugene. It feels crazy to say that Eugene got good support in this set, but it really did. Orpheus got more cool cards. And just in general, like, there's also many ride lines that are, you can build in very many different ways. And then also stuff like Zorga that's going to be very interesting to explore. And then sadly, stuff like Orpheus is going to feel very samey. I don't see many ways that this build will differ because there's just a lot of really good cards that you want to play and not much else. So yeah, that's basically my first impressions of D-BT03. So yeah, what did you think? That is the set review, or not really set review, the first impressions for set 3. Of course, we'll be revisiting this. I'm also going to start doing deck profiles from set 3 early, because I will be building more decks in Japanese going forward, because surprise, surprise, I am, unless something goes terribly wrong, moving to Japan next spring. So that's going to be very exciting. And so in order to make the pain of moving a little bit less bad, I am slowly starting to build up and upgrade my Japanese decks now. So you can look forward to earlier deck profiles for going forward with set 3. So that's going to be very, very exciting. But yeah, that's basically it for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please do give it a like. If you like the content, please do subscribe. And otherwise, I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.